resulting in the improvement of life and well-being. So in other words, acceleration of digital transformation is about harnessing the power of the digital world to improve the well-being of our societies. If you look at the UNCTAD report of 2021 on digital economy, the report observes that the state of play in the data-driven digital economy is highly uneven, and countries need to do more to benefit from the digital economy. And hence the term acceleration. You accelerate digital transformation to respond to the emerging need in this new world of the digital economy. Let me try to put this in perspective. If you look at the data in existence today, as of 2021, the world average of mobile 3G penetration in terms of population was at 95%. That is the global average, 95%. And compare that with Africa. Africa was only at 82%. So the whole world together is 95% average in terms of 3G access compared to 82% in Africa. And also in terms of usage, the world average in 2021 was at 62.5%. So we must distinguish availability and usage. 62.5%, that being the global average. What about in Africa? 32.8%. So we cannot talk about transformation that is changing lives without addressing the digital divide on the African continent. So what is the situation obtaining here at home? Ladies and gentlemen, you will find, or you'll agree with me, that the data-driven digital economy in Kenya is rapidly growing and evolving as a result of expansion of connectivity, an enabling policy and regulatory environment, and focused sector leadership. Today in Kenya, at least 96.4% of the Kenyan population is covered by 3G and 4G network. This is actually above the African average and measures very well against the global average, as I've indicated above. But we also undertook a study to just understand the nuances around the digital gaps in Kenya. So our report on access gap study shows that a total voice service gap based on the combined coverage of all Tier 1 operators has shrunk to around 3.4% today, and the broadband service gap also shrunk to about 3.7%. So the existence of this gap goes against the global access to ICT mantra of leaving no one behind, hence the importance of pursuing the zero-gap digital divide strategy to deliver affordable and accessible broadband connectivity for all. While we have commendable broadband penetration, the usage remains a major challenge. That is here at home. Our data of 2021 December basically tells us that the total number of mobile phone devices connected to mobile networks for that period was 59.58 million, out of which 33.06 million were feature phones and 26.5 million smartphones. In terms of population penetration, this is talking about devices. 54.5% of penetration in terms of smart devices, while feature phones, we have only 67.9%. So what does this mean? It means whilst we have a significant number of smart devices across the country, The ones we use are limited, and the people using them are much fewer. So we got more feature phones than smart devices. So what that means is that we have to do more if we have to exploit the potential provided by connectivity to 3G, 4G type of network. And to realize true digital transformation in the Kenyan context, ladies and gentlemen, I think we must continue addressing the digital divide exhibited by the state of ICT infrastructure, level of adoption and penetration of smart devices, availability and variety of digital content, and skill set for the development and use of digital tools. Talking about ICT infrastructure, I think this is critical now. We are struggling in some parts of this country to just enable access to the 2G type of network for people to be able to access voice. We've moved on, of course, in majority of sections of society to 3G, 4G, but evidence also shows that in the next 5 years, the dominant network will be 4G and 5G. So we're going to do away with 3G. But from an infrastructure perspective, how are we prepared for these changes? Talking about 5G, where we sit as the authority, of course, you're all aware that we drafted the 5G implementation roadmap, which will soon be launching. We've made significant progress. World over, that is how the sector is moving. So my challenge to us is, while we're dealing with 3G, 4G now, we must be fully prepared for the new dispensation around the potential benefits around 5G, which invites us to look into the type of infrastructure we're investing in the next few years. Adoption and penetration of smart devices, I alluded to this. This is critical. You can have 100% coverage in terms of broadband availability, but given the nature of inequalities that exist in society, not all of us will be able to access the benefits of broadband availability. Why? Because we don't have smart devices. What policies or strategies can we put together as industry players to ensure that we have easily accessible smart devices to everyone in this country? Availability and variety of digital content. People use these platforms because they find value. And value is generated by the content that is available on those particular platforms. How can we make this possible for everyone? And we are talking also about diversity or variety of content. And all of us, we pursue different interests when we go online. So the question is, how can we build an ecosystem that allows the growth of more content that is diverse, providing users options? Then lastly, of course, skill set. This is going to be very, very important. We cannot have content without building our startups to give us more content, and the content that is contextual, responding to the needs of society, both in urban areas and in rural areas. So we must rethink the way we build our capacity or skills, our university programs. We must think about what type of education we are offering to our young people. Under the USF program, as I come to the end, the Universal Service Fund, which is a fund that is created under law and supported by the different operators present here. The CE administers that fund. And the idea behind the fund is to be able to address this digital divide that is experienced in our country today. We are getting into the new strategic phase, starting mid this year. And this strategic phase is informed by the experiences we've had in the last few years. Our focus in this new phase is going to be on affordability, accessibility, and availability of digital platforms for as many citizens as much as possible. A bit more investment in research work and innovation centers. That's going to be part of that priority. So as we get in this phase, in your own spaces, we look forward to collaborate much more, to use the lessons learned in the past under the USF Fund to be able to effectively and efficiently implement the program under this coming phase. Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, there's a question that I've not heard people talk about a lot in this sector, and that's the question of sustainability. We are going to automate government. We are going to change the way government works in terms of delivery of services. So the challenge I pose to my colleagues in government always is, how can we make sure that the delivery of ICT services is sustainable? Sustainable in terms of the service you're providing, sustainable in terms of the infrastructure you're deploying. And I come to this point partly because of the experience we had in the last cycle on one of the pilot programs under the Broadband for Schools. That project has given us a lot of insights in terms of how best we can be able to deliver universal access to broadband services, and especially for schools. One is that such projects are multi-stakeholder kind of projects. Different actors must come together to ensure that the investments they are making are for the long term. It means somebody must be willing to pay for the additional cost of making sure that the services are available over the long haul. And what I see being the challenge in this sector is that we deliver sometimes ICT projects as projects without paying attention to the question of sustainability. And that's one of the greatest lessons we've learned under this particular education program. Now we are going to scale it up in accordance with the master plan. It invites us to rethink that question of sustainability in terms of cost, ownership, and of course, usage. So as we think about digital transformation, ladies and gentlemen, if there's anything we must learn, we must think through. One is that we still have that digital divide, and transformation should be the one helping us, moving these people who are left behind to be part of the entire, the bigger fabric of our social well-being. And we must therefore focus on infrastructure, focus on devices, access to devices, focus on content, and a variety of it, and we must also focus on skill sets, reimagining how we deliver ICT services to our customers. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Those of you who have hired media consultants, they will tell you, if you speak to media and the first question is the easiest, take more minutes answering it so that you kill the other. So Ezra is a very good student of media. So now I'm going to ask my friend Mugo to come and react to what Ezra has said, and to remind him that this is not, you are reacting, not covering up the space like Chiloba did. Thank you.
You know, when Ezra started, it was in the morning, nights. Good afternoon. So good afternoon, everybody. I think I will just take the protocols that the DGCA observed as done on all our behalfs and jump straight into the subject matter. Then today and this morning I had a lot of speakers who were not able to transition from the notion of a permanent secretary to one of a principal secretary. And I think the reason for that is because of the fact that there was a former permanent secretary in the room who's larger than life. And permanent secretaries, unlike principal, are used to giving direction. So he's directing me to react. I mean, I had my own remarks to make, but the former permanent secretary, and we work together very well, has given me direction. And I mean, who am I but to accept? But let me first say that I have to be very careful in reacting to my regulator. And as you all know, there's a very topical matter that we are dealing with him and my colleagues, the two other operators right now on this SIM card, SIM registration. And let me just say that on the SIM registration issue, it's critical that all of us adhere to it so that we can be able to reach out to that phone on April 16th, Good Friday, and be able to make calls. But accelerating digital transformation, that's a theme of this conference. And I think a lot of what the DG covered, statistics, you all have the statistics, 28% of Africa covered by 4G, quite a bit of the continent. Kenya specifically has tremendous broadband coverage, but the actual utilization is very low of data. And that is when we say data, I had to just make it clear. We have a data protection commissioner, and that data and broadband, sometimes, we interchange. We use data very loosely, right? When we mean broadband, and we refer to it as data. What is very clear, and some speakers have alluded to it, is that over the last couple of years, the COVID pandemic has forced the acceleration of previously existing technological trends. That's a positive out of COVID, but at the same time has accentuated the divide. It was a euphemism to talk about the digital divide. I'm sure 99% of people had no idea what that meant, but that has become very clear over the last couple of years, that access to broadband is a sine qua non. Right now, whether it's work, study, play, we're doing that virtually. And yet, not all of us are able to do it because of a lack of affordability, access, and just, digital proficiency. There are people who have the devices, they have the network, but they have no clue how to convert that and leverage that in their businesses. Just earlier this morning, the good professor was telling us about his work with Mama Mbogas, and they didn't realize that they could actually use their devices, their mobile phones, to contact customers, to get deliveries done, because they didn't have the proficiency. And sometimes we forget that digital proficiency. Some of our children, many of you, are digital natives, unlike some of us who were born in an analog world and have had a tough time converting into this new world. At Telkom, access, affordability is very important to us. And this is something that I think we've been known in the market for leading on. Mobile network, expanding our mobile network is a big part of it, but not just our mobile network, our fiber network. And recently, just a couple of weeks ago, we landed the peace cable, the Pakistan, East Africa, China, Europe cable that is at 192 terabytes, brings in more capacity than all the previous 5 cables combined. And that we are landing at our landing station just north of here in Nyali. And that capacity is a recognition of the fact that affordable access to broadband services, because professionally, socially, we are now living ever more virtually, is critical. You know, we have our own services and products. Those of you who haven't heard of Madaraka Life, where we are providing 1 gigabyte per month for life for an initial price of 50 shillings and a monthly price of 5 shillings. And the idea of that is to make sure that we have as many people as possible having access to the virtual world in which a lot is happening, and we cannot afford to have the big part of our population, of our fellow citizens, not being a part of that virtual world because they cannot afford or they have no access to broadband. And so this is why it is important that we have products such as that, or devices such as this, which, you know, most of you probably don't remember holding a device like this because you're all on your big gadget gizmos. And I've got my good friends here from the various vendors who have got smartphones, but the ability to be able to have a device like this, where you can go onto YouTube, you can tether, you can browse, you can be on WhatsApp. Right now we have this on offer for 1,500 shillings, but it's difficult to have it at that kind of a price unless, and this is when I'm coming to Dr. Ndemo, who's just stood up to give me the hook. I'm just getting where he was going to say. Unless, of course, the issues, this is what he wanted me to say, the issues affecting our ability to offer access properly are such items as the cost of spectrum. So yes, when a DG we're going into 5G, I hope that you'll make that accessible to us at reasonable prices so that we can be able to subsidize these devices smartly for most Kenyans. Taxation, taxation philosophy around the ICT industry. We need to go back to the drawing book and think it through in a smarter way. We cannot tax the digital world just by supplanting analog world policies and philosophy. And finally, infrastructure security, where many of you I know, especially, you know, have made calls to either the operators about network outages. A lot of times what you don't know is that these outages are being caused by the great road networks you're all celebrating. And I do too, as Vision 2030, I mean, that used to be my big thing. But we have a lot of fiber cuts. They happen on a daily basis, you know, and each time this happens and there's a network outage, I think it's important for policymakers, for lawmakers, to make sure that this infrastructure is categorized as critical national security infrastructure, because it could be some telemedicine person, you know, there could be an operation going on, and that outage happens and someone dies. You know, we haven't yet internalized the importance of that. So this, amongst many other things, are some of the issues I hope that conferences such as this will help us discuss and address and jointly find solutions. Otherwise, I want to congratulate ICTA and the DG, the acting DG ICTA, for a great conference. I'm happy to be back here after many years. I was there at the beginning with Professor Ndemo, the then permanent secretary. Sir?
I'm being told that the time is running out. Just 2 speakers, and I want to just give an advice, those who may come to these positions of Ezra and others. Internalize everything. Don't go into protocols because they eat up time. And speak from your heart, because one minister, I can't say which country, was a very good in delivery. You know, you give him the speech, he bangs the table. I'm going to make sure that broadband is all over the place. And then one day, because he was rough to his people, they did everything that he would say, promising. And the 3rd page, there was one sentence: "You are on your own, sir." Nothing. So, because Mugo didn't raise some of these things because he feared the regulator, I'm going to ask, I'm going to ask Fiona Songa to be as honest as she can with the aspect of infrastructure and speak from your heart.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll just get straight to the point, all protocols observed. At TESPOC, some of the things that we've seen that are quite a challenge in terms of infrastructure are what I'm going to just highlight so that we can pick the conversation from there. And around infrastructure access and affordability, if we cannot, as service providers, ensure that you have access, because we are constantly having to repair, spending more on repairing and fixing what we have already rolled out, it means it becomes a challenge for us to offer universal access, to roll out into new areas, and it becomes also a problem for us to give you the connectivity at more affordable pricing. And then that means that basically we have to find ways of how to mitigate this. So I want to table some suggestions and issues and suggestions of what I think we should be able to do. When it comes to infrastructure availability and universal access, for service providers to be able to honor their universal access obligations, it means that we have to protect the already existing infrastructure. The challenges we have around that is that our partners who deploy other infrastructures do not, one, recognize ICT infrastructure as infrastructure worth protecting. Road contractors will tell us there is no law that requires them to contact us, to inform us, or to compensate us when they are doing their road networks and even for the damage that they cause on infrastructure. While we've got some few service providers, in this case, the power companies, utility companies, being able to get compensation, be notified of any road disruptions on the infrastructure and be given time to get it done. ICT is never considered that way. So you find you will have, like during the period of the building of the expressway, we have had up to 30 cuts a day. And 30 cuts a day become too many for service providers to just do the normal fixing. They have then to pull out the entire stretches of infrastructure and do it all again. And it's happening over and over and over. We got a message on Friday that there was going to be sweeping of the expressway to open it up. The cables are not yet put where they're supposed to be. Permanent solution is not yet ready. We are using temporal solutions. We already have been warned by today afternoon, those cables will be pulled out and they'll be cut, and therefore customers on those networks are going to be in the dark. The notice and the time being given for us to be able to fix and mitigate, and it's like there's no collaboration, no coordination. And these are the challenges that cause service providers to charge extra for the services they give. It cannot be cheap, it cannot be affordable. It has to become a premium product for those who can afford. Why? Because it's very difficult to keep on fixing and to have such no notice periods when you have to fix. So as TESPOC, we've been driving and pushing for a critical infrastructure protection bill. What do we want this bill to cure? We want it to facilitate for coordination of infrastructure deployment with other regulators. So our regulator, Kenha, Kura, pipeline, railways, whoever else is building sewer, water, whoever else is building anything else, we have to collaborate. We have to plan together because it starts with the planning. ICT guys are not road contractors and we're not sewage and water guys. We just know to lay fiber. So don't tell us if we burst your pipe, we will fix it. We will not fix it. We will not fix the road. That is not our core business. But if this were built, giving us space for our infrastructure, we are more than happy to use what is provided and to share the ducts. And infrastructure sharing is already happening within the sector. We also need to have our security agents understand what it is. I've gone to the police with service providers to report a fiber cut, and it is comedy. And not comedy because you intended it to be comedy, but because the level of awareness, other police force, and through the entire legal system is so low that it cannot facilitate even prosecution on the already existing acts. And one thing that we're trying to do as TESPOC is to coordinate with the National Cybercrime Coordinations Committee to ensure that we put in place a process within the judiciary that can help us ensure that prosecution happens. Because it's pointless for us to have laws that we cannot implement and laws that do not seem to make sense and to the police officers who are supposed to be the enforcers. So we hope that that will be able to help us. The other thing we need to address is the whole issue of coordination at the county level and at the national level. ICT is not a devolved function. County governments need to stop addressing ICT as a devolved function. ICT operators already pay licensing fee to the regulator at the national level. And that means that they cannot come to the counties, and in addition to paying for access to lay infrastructure, you want them to have a license to operate. The license they hold is a national license. And we need the county governments to be appreciative of this and to be able to cooperate and collaborate with us on the same. And that also applies to the county roads. We've had counties where for 9 months last year, there's a county that denied access for repair and maintenance work to all service providers. That puts everybody in that county at risk. It puts all the e-commerce services at risk, all the banks, everybody who's using anything ICT. And it took a lot of negotiations for us to be able to get to a point where, okay, fine, now access is being given, but it has to be a process where we as TESPOC have had to step in to be able to facilitate and to make sure we are checking and saying, yes, they have infrastructure in these locations. Hiyo kazi mingi, lazima tutafute njia ya kupunguza so that we are able to work better. If we can collaborate at the different sectors and have a proper county coordination level committee of sorts, a national coordination committee of sorts, have the security agents understanding what we are reporting to them, and create awareness. Awareness is with you. The infrastructure is yours. There's a campaign TESPOC has been running over the last few months where we are telling the general public on Twitter, when you see people pulling cables, please take photos, put on Twitter and say infrastructure, we've seen our infrastructure, hashtag infrastructure. And that is helping us also keep track of both the vandals and the real infrastructure owners on what they are doing. Because sometimes the vandals dress like service providers, they pull down the infrastructure, they use the cables za kuanika nguo, they use the ducts za for water as water pipes in some places, and that becomes very expensive. And with that, I think I stop at that, and I'll answer any questions on any challenges and any of the proposals I've tabled. Thank you.
See what democracy brings. During my time, when we were laying NOFPI, and the county clerk in northern Kenya stopped the cable. So I got him arrested for 3 weeks, and until the cable went through, then we released him. So it works up to now. Don't change the constitution. Yeah. So we're going to have Steve Kamunya, Huawei Technologies. My strategy is that I want to get rid of the infrastructure side and then the application to see how it's happening. So Kamunya, if you please, less than 2 minutes because we're going to be kicked out.
Yes, thank you very much. I'll take it up from the side of emerging technologies and connectivity. One of the data which I know is currently NOFB is almost close to 9,000 kilometers, connecting all the 47 counties and 290 sub-counties. But which is a good and a strong infrastructure to accelerate connectivity, But we still have a long way to make sure that this infrastructure goes to the world because we still have a huge gap. Some of the emerging technologies, which like Huawei, we are pioneered, like 5G, will help the MNOs, like, accelerating this last mile connectivity to ensure that the end users can be served effectively and efficiently using these emerging technologies. We hope that, like what Ezra said, that there'll be more of the investments, trying to motivate the MNOs in terms of coverage. I think from the MNOs, the mobile broadband is also important to ensure that the homes, the schools are connected. A lot of telemedicine application can be, use cases can be done when we have this broadband, through these emerging technologies. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. I don't know where you were born, but now we can hear, because Kenyans normally add something, because I'm going to ask David Bunei to tell us the ideal environment you need to succeed from your side.
Thank you, Prof. So I think a lot has been said on the infrastructure side, and I think a number of you here have been part of that generation of building the infrastructure, and we continue to build infrastructure. We still need to double the infrastructure, probably quadruple the infrastructure that will really support an hyper-connected Kenya, we might call it. And I think thanks to a lot of the changes and policies that we've seen coming up from data protection and all the other areas. But I think we need to rethink about the back end, and I think content is going to be critical once we have all these hyperconnectivity to the county, to the police station, at the local community, to the healthcare in the local community. That obviously comes back to the data center somewhere. Konza is here. And we do believe that we need to re-engineer the processes also in government, not only to just digitize the applications or the systems that exist today, some of the manual processes, but we need to rethink that entire space. How do we change how we interconnect with our counterparts in government? For example, whether it's KRA or NTSA or the Ports Authority, or all the essential government services that we offer in this country from an application perspective. And that is critical for us to think through it, rather than just digitizing and the manual processes. The second piece is, how do you unify that to ensure that citizens have a seamless experience? We know today, a lot of us here, we've got private emails, we've got private sites that we visit, and each of that time you are actually using probably a different password. What we need is to try to federate that and ensure that there is perhaps a very seamless experience for citizens in this country to access applications, government applications. So single ID, unique ID, connect to eCitizen, connect to NTSA, connect to KRA, connect to all the new services and applications that are coming up in a way that's seamless and gives you the experiential, as a Kenyan citizen, accessing any service anywhere. So I think there's a lot in that space that we need to think through as we think about infrastructure, as we think about connectivity, cost of devices, and I do believe we should not leave behind that re-engineering of that piece. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to ask Wycliffe, to also add on to what David has been saying, and what is it that we need so that we don't arrest these county people for being...
Thank you, Prof. Good afternoon. I think a lot has been said about this thing called digital transformation, and it's been a buzzword for the last about the 1 decade. And when it comes to connectivity and making sure that we're getting it to the last mile, I think it's important to recognize the important role that apart from infrastructure and enhancing capability that brings into it, we need to have a seamless connectivity with the end users, which is the mwananchi. And for us to be able to do that, I think we need to look at the back end. After we've done all that fiber cable laying and we've connected everybody, what happens in the back end and how how secure are we? What are we doing to ensure that all the data that is being collected or being utilized along this chain is secure, it resides in a place that is very convenient for everybody to access, it's content aware, and then also it is secure to the extent that all these hackers that normally come around do not be able to manipulate it. And that is where Dell Technologies comes in. What we do is we provide you with end-to-end solutions, including infrastructure and including software-defined networking that enables you to move away from the threats of fiber cuts and the Council of Police and all that interfering with your connectivity. I think it's important also to realize that at the end of the day, affordable and accessible broadband connectivity is important. But at the end of the day, also, how long are we going to be able to sustain that model, and how long is the government going to be able to roll out in that specific rollout period that they're doing that? So we think and we believe that when we put together technologies that define the future, we need to have a roadmap along which we're gonna define this course. And Dell Technologies is well positioned to drive along this conversation with you at any time. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you for being nice. These are the new Kenyans, I think. For 5 years ago, just to brag that I went to Canada, we had a conference on inclusive development, and I sat next to somebody from Amazon, vice president, not vice president. So I asked him, what the hell are you trying to do? They were buying stores and other things. So he told me, we want to supply 7 billion people what they want, how they want it, 3 things. What, why, and when they want it. And I said, my God, we are dead. Do you think, if I can ask Robin, do you think we have prepared the market ready for that to happen here?
Thank you, Prof. And a real pleasure to be here for us as Amazon Web Services. It's our first time here, so super excited to be here. But just coming back to the topic of the day, when we think about universal broadband access, which is actually a United Nations goal, there's a goal to have universal access within Africa by 2030. But the amount of infrastructure that's needed, I'm just raising the spectrum a bit to cover the continent. They're talking of 250,000 4G base stations and the same quantity of kilometers of fiber optics. So when you think about that, it just starts to tell you that we are not talking about just one kind of a player being able to then be able to roll this out. Not in Africa, not even in Kenya, which is definitely having much better metrics. And from us as Amazon, in full recognition of what universal broadband access enables, being a cloud computing player, in 2019, we set up a subsidiary company called Kuiper Systems, whose role was really to then launch and roll out low Earth orbit satellite systems that will provide super fast and affordable access broadband to unserved and underserved communities across the world. Just a few weeks ago, happy to appreciate and recognize that we've secured about 83 launches now with 3 commercial space companies, which then talks that it was not just an intention, there is now a mechanism in place that will then cover the whole world. And it's not just about universal broadband access for access sake. Being a cloud computing player, we know what that enables. Having worked with players in this country, across the continent, whether we're talking about, I know in the last day and a half, we've also been talking about digital skills, which is something I'd just like to narrow down on. We've seen the impact of that on our youth, where we are able to roll out campaigns. We just launched something a year ago with the Ministry of ICT through Ajira, and we are now in the 4th cohort of that, and we are seeing ability to cover populations across the country because of access, because these were rolled out during the COVID era. And so for us, we are excited. We look forward to the ability to complement what the other players in the sector are continuing to do.
I think Liquid and Telecom who are here, listen to him carefully. He's going to finish you from the sky. The latency, the latency for low orbiters just dropped almost like fiber. So be careful, Mugo. We are in big trouble. So let me ask whether we have sufficient capability for security. Abdu, can we be able to protect these people from all this investment, that stuff?
Thank you, Professor. Let me just say, yes, you can actually protect people from Amazon getting them from the sky. So I think when you talk about security, once you get infrastructure, once you get connectivity, ultimately what is the goal? Well, the goal is service delivery. Ultimately is service delivery. And the most important thing for service delivery is the availability of the service itself in the first place. If the service is not available, when everything convergence, pun intended, when everything converges in the data center, the question is, can we keep it? Can we keep it from the wrong hands? The biggest threat now to any economy is cyber threat, and I say that with absolute confidence. And to give an example, the nations that have developed from a digital perspective, I think we can confidently say the West, the US, but what is the most important topic today in the White House? Ransomware, cyber attacks. And two factors accelerated that discussion. The pandemic, where the traditional security, maybe traditional, not yet, but doesn't work, where you trust everything inside, but you don't trust everything outside, where you create perimeter security and firewalls. That is not sustainable anymore. You don't, the work from home, work from anywhere, whereas data sources are everywhere, including in Amazon, has taken the traditional roadmaps of security and put it in the dustbin. There's been a buzzword called ZTA, or Zero Trust Architecture. It's no longer a buzzword. It is actually, about 6 weeks ago, the United States Biden administration put together an executive requirement for the federal government and working with the Federal Reserve to make sure all the banks and all the governments in the US put together a zero trust architecture framework and have it implemented in 24 months. The reason? The two factors. The war in Ukraine. That is exactly what everybody's talking about. The data sources are everywhere. A good example is if you use perimeter security as an example in your house, anybody out of the gate, there's a security guard at the gate, you trust everything inside. That was fine, but that's no longer the case. Now even your chimney becomes a threat. You just take a cloud out, the chimneys take the smoke out to the cloud, but now you can get dark clouds from the sky. So you need to protect yourself from every corner. And another example is the cyber warfare. I would like to give an example of one of our top cyber defense team members. He has a crooked finger. He's not from northern Kenya. So he has a crooked finger, and he told me he tried to join the cadet a few years ago. And because he has a crooked, he had a soccer accident when he was young, so his finger stayed crooked. All the factors were okay, but he was let go because of the. But if I can tell you what that crooked finger does to the keyboard, Professor, it's amazing. So, and he doesn't need to fight in the actual jungle. The cyber jungle is the actual real threat. So what can we do as a nation to improve our defensive posture? And if we can get all our authorities to talk together, if we can reform how recruitment happens, and we create a different policy for recruiting young talent, sharp talent, even if they have a crooked finger. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You realized I left Daktari out. It is up to you now whether we bring Ezra here to respond or you say something to defend him. What do you want?
Thank you, Professor. You know, I was getting worried when my colleague was talking here about the security environment because of the cyberspace. I normally tell the young people, please, when it comes to cybersecurity, it's a very rare field, and they need to be part of the problem and part of the solution. You cannot wait in the server room, waiting only to detect, protect, and control. you have to go to the space and be part of the problem and part of the solution. But let me make some few remarks. 3. 1, infrastructure. I've heard about it. I agree with my colleagues here. But when you look at the whole issue of infrastructure, there is need for collaboration. We have a number of agencies and even government companies are rolling out infrastructure across the country. What I'm asking is, can we harmonize? Can we work together? There is no business ICT authority or government building an infrastructure, going to an area where we have another agency who has done it. We need to harmonize to reduce on cost. The other part of infrastructure which I want to talk about is the integration of the infrastructure. When you look at the two critical roads and ICT, they go together. Many a time when we are building this infrastructure, especially the laying down the fiber, in a road corridor, we find that the road contractors come and destroy. I had an experience when I was rolling out, we were rolling out infrastructure from Eldoret to Nandaba. We started from the other part of the South Sudan. Ours was not growing, but the road was growing. We understand that as we do it, they were destroying as they also come. So we were forced to integrate and work together. We need to appreciate the fact that the corridor, the land corridor for infrastructure, water, electricity, and ICT belongs to the road sector. So integration, when we are laying down this infrastructure, is very important so that we reduce on cost. Over the last 5 years, we have lost over 5 billion as government when it comes to infrastructure destruction and damage, just because of lack of coordination in the way we work. So I think that is an area we need to work together and see how we can integrate this infrastructure so that we can tell the roads to be building ducts for ICT, so that as we come as ICT companies, we just deploy our active equipment. The other part, which is very important, is resources. We talk of very nice ideas in connected and in government and everywhere else. But what is very important is to have a focused approach in the way we invest in ICT in this country. I know other infrastructure, they get a lot of attention when it comes to budget allocation. But when it comes to ICT, you know exactly what it means. Yet you cannot build a very vibrant economy without oiling it. Then it will just crack. And the oil for any economy is ICT. So as ICT professionals and also sector, we need to really advocate on that matter so that we are given attention as ICT sector when it comes to budget allocation. You remember during COVID-19, I normally say we were at home. Yes? The roads were there, but they were empty. It is true, but everybody was looking for connectivity to work. That shows that we have really left that area for long without giving enough attention when it comes to development and also resources. The other part is a strategy, so that we need to talk with a focused strategy in terms of implementation. And I'm looking at it, for example, we have talked about rural electrification. Very nice. We are able to reach our customers in the rural areas. The rural people are able to participate because there is power in the rural areas. We have also talked about road infrastructure, rural roads. Yes, we are able to reach the common customer, our citizen in the rural area. But we have never, ever talked about rural digitization. Do we have a strategy to make sure that as we deploy this cable, I heard about telecom. We learned last week, 192 terabyte of this cable. We have over 6 cables, submarine cables, landing. But unless we have the end user enjoy this facility, let me tell you, the market will still shrink. So we need to have a deliberate effort and a focused approach towards reaching the rural areas so that all this infrastructure and the capacity we have in Nairobi, and ICT look like this for the elite. So we need to focus. When we talk about digital divide, we talk about the infrastructure, digital skills, and then the tools, as Chaloba talked about it. And the last one, as we move in this space, as the world is shaped by technology, the byproduct is data. And data will be the in thing going forward. The discussion in the digital space going forward will be data, because data is business. So we'll be talking about data in form of business, data sales officers, data scientists, data analytics, and how might you sell data. But that is where we are going. So we need to look at the environment of infrastructure when it comes to cloud infrastructure, which I think the country is very naive or very scared or no. I think they are a little bit, they are seeing it cloud as a risk, but we need to advocate at this level of professionalism so that we are trusted that going cloud is the in thing, because there is no way you will host all this data in our normal traditional servers, which we normally talk about it in our offices. I think I wanted to add those points. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree with you, but I'm going to make a very simple appeal. 49% of broadband cost is tax and devices. I teach students. I know the level of inequality that is in this country. Some students would walk outside to attend my class because they can't find a place to sit in the house. Some cannot buy a mobile because 49% is tax. To buy a smartphone to attend class. This is something government can remove, and we see more affordability, both broadband and devices. This is the time to do it. The budget has been just read. They are going to discuss it. Let's tell politicians that they are the ones who would benefit in this campaign by removing that 49% and they put it somewhere else. Yeah? We change this country. Thank you.
That's that moment where you're looking for the connection. The panelists are looking for the moderator to say, are we done? The moderator has left them, so I shall come and connect this at this particular point in time. Another round of applause for them, tafadhali. Quite an interesting discussion that took place right here, and of course the comments do continue online as well. You can be part of the conversation, hashtag Connected Summit 2022 to get that in. We've come to the end of this particular session, but quick briefing even as we go into our break for the dignitaries in the room. As we get outside, there's an exhibition stand with lots for you to see. So once you're out, you've been asked to take your left, go to the back, see what has been put in store for you this particular event. So all the dignitaries, please, you can go to that particular side. The rest of us will go and have lunch. But before we start stepping out of the room, just a quick layout of what will happen after the room. Right here, once you're back from lunch, we'll have the emerging and smart technologies discussion taking place in this room. This is the Dr. Meister room, so that will be happening here as well. Also in this room, we'll have the open data and data protection conversation happening in this particular room. ICT as an economic accelerator and technology in learning conversations will take place in the Jumuika room, which is next to this one. So if you're interested in ICT as an economic accelerator or technology in learning, that's happening in Jumuika, which is next to this particular room. Now for the amazing work that they've done as speakers, as panelists, for those who have been grilled, like our DG from CA and Mogo Kibati as well, we'll give them a token of appreciation for their insights before we break for lunch. I'll ask for members of the board from the ICT authority to come on up as they hand out those particular gifts. Ushers as well. Are the ushers present? The ushers can bring the gift hampers to the front as we do that. Okay, we'll do that very quickly, and of course then proceed to lunch for those who are going for lunch, and our dignitaries will go and see what's happening at the exhibition stand. Of course, remember, the hashtag continues, Connected Summit 2022. Okay, there we have it right in there. Our photographers are ready. We'll go through this very quickly. So I think we can actually do that from that side, from our speaker from that particular end. We'll have our CEO, probably the first one to get the gift as he exits the stage from that particular side and heads on down. Because our chair will be handing out these particular gifts. Okay, so right on that side as we exit the stage, quick photo op as you get your gift and come on down. Members of the board are the ones who are presenting these gifts. Okay, so are we ready? Can you go right ahead? Fantastic. There we go. And then you smile for the camera. Absolutely, good stuff. It's not a gift if you're not smiling. So yes, let's do that as we move it right along. Thank you very much. So of course you get your gift, your token of appreciation, and then you can head on to the exit and go to our stands and see what we have this afternoon as well.
decision making. For example, as a government, how do you know if a humanitarian intervention or strategy is working if you do not have statistics on how people are affected? As an investor, how do you know if a school or a clinic is a better investment if you have no base information with which to estimate or track their impact? Data has come to exist as a fruit concept in socio, political, technology, and corporate settings. This is the sense in which we talk about data as the new oil, or the data bulge, or living in the age of data. Ladies and gentlemen, data has become one of the most valuable resources in today's world. Data is a fabric on which our global ecosystem relies on to function. Our technological enrichment devices and lifestyle depends on the fast and reliable transference of data. The collection and the use of personal data for purposes of making key strategic decisions that consequently play a key role in driving strong and suitable economic development cannot be underestimated. It is against this background that the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner was established in 2020 to operationalize the Data Protection Act 2019, whose objective and purpose is to regulate the process of personal data. Ladies and gentlemen, what does this mean? That any organization collecting and processing personal data must adhere to the provisions of Data Protection Act. The office has further developed 3 sets of regulations, which include the Data Protection General Regulations 2021, Data Protection Compliance Handling Enforcement Regulation 2021, which came into effect on 17th of February 2022, and the Data Protection Registration of Data Controllers and Processors Regulations 2021, which will commence on the 14th of July 2022. With the advancement in technology and innovation, policymakers and economic development officers now have access to tools that allow them to collect and analyze personal data to make sure that the growth is applied for purposes of intended and taking into account rights of the individuals, and at the same time support an economic development that is ethical and workable. Given the important role that data plays in the decision making, it goes without saying there is an inherent ethical obligation that everyone who relies on personal data in decision making must comply with. Q, data protection. The role of implementation of data protection lies with both public and private institutions that rely on data protection to make decisions. For instance, businesses can use personal data to acquire insights about its customer behavior and preference to better inform the services and products offered to them, leading to an ambiguous good social outcome such as traffic flows, increased safety, and ease access to services. However, the same exchange or reliance on personal data can be unpleasant and unexpected outcome to a customer. For instance, it can have an impact of highlighting places and time in which vulnerable people find themselves alone and isolated, facilitating both stalkers and attacks. As such, the need for both private and public institutions to adopt data governance measures, which form the evaluation of what consists as the right or wrong action in relation to data handling. Data protection, which speaks to data ethics, is ever present in parts of all designs and selection decision and practice around data handling. Crucial data ethics is not just a conversation happening on the sidelines, but rather underpins many actions that in the course of such work, even where action may be to do nothing. A key concern of the data protection is the open-endedness of data use. This is to say that it might always not be possible to say ahead of the time on how data will be used and what the intended consequences will be. This is where the implementation of the data protection will come in. Public and private institutions will be expected to adopt standards set out in the regulatory framework, both in the Act and the regulation, to ensure that they provide spaces to consider possible implications from the variety of viewpoints and ensure the potential concerns are explicitly acknowledged and taken into account in the development and adoption of technology focusing on social intervention. As I conclude, ladies and gentlemen, entities will have the responsibility of discussing ethical consideration across many different situations in relation to data, personal data. We, as the regulator, hope that we will enhance the awareness that ethics is not a one-off or separate kind of concern. We recognize that data ethics contributes significantly to the effectiveness and positive implication of data solution. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to appreciate that life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forward. Therefore, Connected Summit gives us an opportunity to reflect on our past as well as plan for a future in the era of data protection. To my fellow participants, let us use this opportunity to reflect on what needs to be done to make sure that we improve the ecosystem of data protection amongst us. Asanteni sana.
Thank you so much. One more round of applause for Ms. Kasait, raising some pertinent issues when it comes to data protection in this country. Our next speaker is Mr. Clifford Okembo. He's the Chief Executive Officer of the Environmental Systems Research Institute, to make a few remarks before we get into our panel discussion. Round of applause.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Yeah, we are basically talking about data, open data, and of course the protection for the same. I just wanted to set the tone for the discussion that we shall be having after a very great presentation from our Data Protection Commissioner, and really to talk about open data. Really, the first thing is what data is, which of course we've been working with data, and she emphasized how data is that very important component of all the decisions that we make and also the systems that we work with. The systems that we have without data are actually a shell. And so when we think about the open data, we're actually talking about that data that is openly accessible, exploitable, editable, and also shared by anyone or everyone for any purpose, even commercially. And of course, most of us are in business, and you want to realize the amount of value that you get from the open data or data that is available openly. Kenya, or the government of Kenya, is actually in the same kind of, in the right direction when talking about open data, because as early as the year 2011, we were already launching or having our open data site, thanks to those who are the brain heads behind this, Professor Ndemo and the rest, and launched by then President, His Excellency Mwai Kibaki. But the objective was all under the open government initiatives, which basically is to open up the resources and data and information about or collected by government and information that emanates from the different government departments and agencies to ideally help make decisions and also run businesses. Open governance or open government is basically based on innovation or innovative and sustainable public policies and practices that inspired by the principles of transparency, accountability, and participation that we all collaborate in. I'm glad that as we were launching the Kenya National Digital Master Plan, the national spatial data infrastructure was really brought in to be another pillar among the others. Indeed, there are lots of data that come from the government. And even the private sector, we generate lots of data. And you think about the data that come from the government, right from the demographics, economics, agricultural, health, and many others, and all these, how they are important to decision making and investment and other economic developments. Each and every data is from a certain place and they happen everywhere. And so we bring also in the element of location intelligence in the data that we have. And so bringing also the element of geo, that is geographic ICT or geo information system and data. And that is basically what we do in our company. And for some time, we've been working with ICTA in managing their open data site, which is a repository for all the data set. Some of the few things that we'll be talking about and important is the elements of data revolution and how data is important and impactful in several things that we do. The data protection, as this data is shared publicly, what are some of the things that we have to factor in? Are they personal data? And even if not, then to what level are they shared? Are they to be aggregated at some level and all that? But at the same time is the economic value or the, before then it's also the issue of handling this data. There's been a discussion of, in the data protection that is cloud meaning insecure or the other way around. And those are really very great discussions whereby there are perceptions to it and also their reality the same. But this data also, as I've mentioned, is about economic development and empowerment. And so some could generate income or they could be monetized directly or indirectly in that process. We don't lack challenges in the same context. The issues of data currencies, how current are those data, the data policies, the open data policy. We thank God that we've been having the Data Protection Act, but also some probably missing policies of open data policy and others, but also capacity to manage all these data sets. We also still need standards and metadata to enable the data sharing in the open data space. These are many other things that I believe that the panelists will be talking about, and we shall be discussing this afternoon as we combine or balance both the open data, but also bringing in the protection for the same. The most important thing is that we need to have access to this information that is critical for a lot of things that we do, right from decision making to business, economic development, and many others. Thank you very much. I hope the session will be very informative and fruitful. Thank you.
Thank you, Clifford. Setting the tone for the panel discussion, I'd like to introduce the moderator who originally was a panelist but has since been promoted, and that is John Walubengu, lecturer and member of the National Task Force on Blockchain and Artificial Intelligence. Round of applause for him as we get the conversation started.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Rubadiri, for the invitation and introduction. My name is Walubengo. I'm sure most of you are familiar with me. I'm here to do the moderating part of this session. The data commissioner started off with her keynote speech, and she highlighted some things that our panelists will be engaging on. But I took some points that I thought that needed to be sort of repeated that We already now have the regulation. Of course, we had the Act almost 3 years ago, but now we have the regulation in place. And if you're a data controller in the private or public sector, there's a regulation on, registering, I believe by July 14th. So as enterprises or as organizations, both in the public and the private sector, there's a key date to keep in mind. There's also a regulation on complaints, which means that if some of the Kenyan citizens are not happy with the way you're handling their personal data, they now have an opportunity to directly launch complaints with the Data Commissioner's Office. Then there are the general regulations that speak to the principles of data protection, the rights of your citizens. She also mentioned something interesting that we've been discussing more in the AI space, ethics with data. So there is only so much that legislation can do, beyond which now you have to think ethically. And I think that is a good point going forward. Then Clifford here also brought us into now the open data discussion. I don't know if Ndemo is still around. That used to be his pet project when he was in the ministry. Open data, where you sort of volunteer data so that other people, other than yourself, can sort of leverage on that data, make better sense out of it beyond what you probably would have made. And this is a project that started within government. I know it hasn't gained traction, but it is something worth pursuing. How do we avail the data sets that public sector is collecting to our innovators so that they can go there and create some innovation around and insights that can then monetize that particular data. And Clifford with the geomaps, we know that the geomapping data sets tend to be public so that any innovator can integrate those data sets in whatever solutions they're building. And so the public sector should also consider open data as a way of unleashing the power of data to our innovators. But beyond the public, I believe also the private sector, and Safaricom is here, they do have a lot of data that could also be open. If you think about traffic jams in Nairobi, in the morning, if I'm seated in Safaricom server room, I could be able to actually see the jam if I so wished, based on the signals I'm getting from the citizens of Kenya as they go to work. So there's such metadata that is in the hands of private sector. Of course, they can privately monetize that, or if we have a governance framework, and I think the Data Commissioner also talked about data governance. Is there a way in which both public and private sector could share that metadata for the good of the public? So those are some of the issues I picked, but now to introduce my panelists to go deeper into each of them. And I'll give them just to start us off. We have Chris Mukua. Clifford, I know we're through with you, so we'll deal with the panelists, starting with Chris Mukua, who is the lead cloud infrastructure from Oracle. Then next to him is Andrew Masila, who is the lead innovation and R&D from Safaricom. And next to him is the CEO of Kenya National Chamber of Commerce, that's Samuel Matonda. And last but not least, on the far left is Joseph Mathenges, the COO for Seriano. So I'll give each of the panelists just 2-3 minutes to react to the commissioner's speech and then give us some insights about what they think they're experiencing within the data sector. Over to you, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you, Olubengo. Good afternoon, everyone. So my first reflection is on the speech by the Data Protection Commissioner, Madame Immaculate Kasait. So number one is to just congratulate Madame Kasait for, the number of new acts that are coming through that you've made reference to. Some are that are coming to be operationalized as well. We were also discussing as a panel earlier on that we expect this will generate a lot of interest because people know about data protection as a word, but in terms of digging down into the details, it's useful to also just crystallize what the acts say. So number one is just to say we are seeing all this. It's good that you're sharing all these acts that are coming. From the private sector, in our work with customers in the market, besides personal data, there's also what is corporate data. So my first reflection is that in the new acts that are coming in, that there also can be guidelines that will help the participants in the market in how we guide our customers who happen to be government and other private sector entities as well. And when I speak of this is an organization like Oracle, of course, we are synonymous with data. Our DNA is about data, and a lot of you in this room are customers of ours. About what we do with a lot of guidelines we give to our customers is helping customers with a data strategy. So a data strategy that helps to reduce costs, reduce risk, accelerate innovation, and also productive insights out of your data. So when we advise our customers around their data strategy, so it'd be good to just get that awareness of how far can we advise our customers as far as the corporate data especially, because that tends to form a large part of our customer set. And why I ask this is there's a lot of innovation that's coming in globally. Looking at, when you look at the revolution of the industrial revolutions, first industrial revolution, second, and we're right now into what is called the fourth industrial revolution. And data or data-led decisions is a large part of the inventions within the fourth industrial revolution. And the factors of production, as there were in the previous industrial revolutions where it was owning land, owning machinery, owning new innovations like the steam engine or electricity, data is a huge part of a factor of production. So where this data is located is almost becoming, it's borderless really. So part of the direction we advise our customers is with developments, for example, cloud computing. You can still achieve your data strategy of reducing your costs, reducing your risk, accelerating innovation, productive insights, hosting this on cloud. So one of the reflections would be out of the acts that are coming up that there can be a coexistence where a lot of our corporate customers who are looking at reducing costs but maintaining agility, that they can be allowed to host this corporate data in our public clouds. I'll speak for a player like ourselves. We have a lot of global data centers. We also recently launched a data center in South Africa. So, this is coming closer and closer, and we're already in the continent. However, the point here is if this data can also, if the regulation can allow data that can also sit outside of our borders, in the quest of advising our customers as far as their data strategy. So that's the first reflection. Coming to open data, and I like what Clifford shared, as far as data and public and private sector partnering in providing data that provides insights.
So Chris, 1 minute. Yeah.
Great, okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Well, I think what, again, I could tie to the initiative that the Data Protection Commissioner is driving. I think the role should actually be expanded more to just not only protecting private data, but corporate data, but also encouraging organizations to participate with the public and the private, and particularly government, in enabling access to open data. To this point, we, as Oracle, we are big in this space. We actually have an open data repository, and we partner with mostly, researchers in the areas of health, education, and environmental protection. So perhaps this is an area that the Data Protection Commissioner can encourage local organizations to open up their data as well, or to enable partnerships that are for social good, in terms of harnessing data.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Chris. The message from Chris from Oracle, I think, is they have data centers. Their clients are mainly public sector. So the question becomes, what is the impact for government agencies who are customers of Oracle, given that perhaps most of their data is hosted out there in the cloud centers of Oracle? Because I know the Data Protection Act prefers that Kenyan citizen data remains in territory. So I'm sure from where you sit, you are concerned, and perhaps other private sector players are concerned. And I want to bring in the Safaricom lead innovation and R&D, Andrew Masila. Give us your thoughts, react to the Data Commissioner's speech, and what you think are the challenges around data protection.
Thank you, and good evening all. So I'd like to reintroduce myself to give a bit of a context. So Andrew, looking after innovation, research and design at Safaricom. And what we want to do is to transform our society using innovation. And we are pursuing the quadruple helix. It's not clear, okay. And we are pursuing the quadruple helix, looking at the academia, community, government, and industry. And when you look around innovation, which is aligned to the master plan which was launched today, then innovation is actually the next drive of the economy. And today I'll talk about data from an innovation context. Data is billed as the new oil. So from an innovation concept, then we are looking at how do you change the oil? How frequently do you need to change this oil that is data? How do you ensure the engine effectively runs? Do you select oil for 5 kilometers or 10 kilometers? So really looking at data as the opportunity, as the key driver. And also touching on a few things on which we could potentially partner in our model. So I'll first begin with challenges. One of the challenges with data, so I'll speak about 3 things. One is the challenges around data, and some of them are around the subject of data, and in most cases that is the customer. And we've seen this when you're installing a new software. I'm not sure who reads all the terms and conditions, and that becomes a starting point. Are customers really aware? And that is one of the challenges. Number 2 is around technology debt. And if you look at it, most applications were written in an era when we didn't have privacy by design and default. And you find that there's need to refactor these applications so that they conform to data privacy by default. Now, some of the things you're seeing, the new trends are around privacy by design. The other bit is, of course, data doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists in infra, in servers, as been mentioned by my fellow panelists. So there's an opportunity actually around setting up local infrastructure, especially for the big tech and the cloud providers, to ease in the journey of moving the data to more efficient cloud technologies. Alongside that, the other challenge is also the evolution of technologies. With 5G and IoT, you find that the volume, velocity of data is increasing, and do we have enough compute to take advantage of this data? So those are salient issues which are emerging. And an area which we are cognizant, especially, and where we are looking to really drive impact is you actually need skills to take advantage of data. And at Safaricom, actually, we are driving a big push to actually upskill in many other technical areas, but specifically focusing on data. And this is where the quadruple helix partnership comes in, so that we are able to upskill as many Kenyans to be able to take advantage of the data that is coming through the new skills. So this is an industry engagement, which I think after this we can talk more about it and see how we can go through it. Then the second thing I want to talk about is around innovation. And we're in the era of Web 3.0, hyper-personalization, and actually where the customer is in control of the data. There's increased intelligence that is happening, and I think as Safaricom, we are continuously evolving our network. So when you think about 5G, first of all, it shortens the time the data travels in the network, so you can be more agile in your innovations. It also increases the capacity so that you can handle more data at the same time. When you think about Daraja, which has over 49,000 accounts, then we are speaking of a platform that is pairing innovation with data. There's also M-Pesa mini apps, which provides a data platform which you can actually launch your application without the need of developing separately for different phone applications. So there's a lot that Safaricom has done, but there is much more that could be done. And I think here the rallying call is, even if you're in legal, even if you are in marketing, then there is a notion of one more skill. Tech is the one more skill, and more importantly, the rallying call is to have data as a one more skill in whichever profession you're doing. And as part of this, also sparring data through innovation. The last thing I want to talk about is around ethics and data. So data is a good tool. It can be used for both good and bad. And even in our program, as you go to universities, we interact with communities. We were at Pwani Innovation Week 2 weeks ago, engaging the community. We ran the FinTech Innovation Week previously. And what you're saying, we want to increase more of the good actors in this data space. And as we take the technical skills to institutions, we are not only talking about the hardcore technology skills, but also the soft skills. And ethics is very key. And as you're dealing with data, then ethics actually becomes your maker-checker to ensure that you are using data for the right purpose. So really excited and looking forward to how data will spur innovation and transform Kenya. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew, for those insights. I've just picked one, actually two, from where you left, ethics, and the second one, privacy by design. So on ethics, what comes to mind for most of us is those mobile money lending. I can probably guess that most of us here may not be in that space, but the youngsters suffer from that space. They keep downloading these mobile money lending apps, getting quick and very fast loans, mobile money loans. But when they default, the mobile money lenders go wild with their data. They start calling their grandmother, their girlfriends, their brothers, and sending messages to these people telling them, tell your relative here to pay us our 5,000 shillings, or we do X, Y, and Z. So these apps what they're doing is once you install them, behind the scenes, they're actually harvesting your address book. And you're not aware. So if you default, your friends start calling you wondering, what is this you've gotten yourself into? So there's need to also educate the developers that these types of tactics are actually not provided for by the Data Protection Act. Thanks for those insights. And I want now to invite Samuel Matonda. He told me it's Matunda with an O. He's the Chief Executive Officer of Kenya National Chamber of Commerce. Please, the floor is yours. React to the Commissioner's speech and give us your insights. Thank you. 3 minutes.
Thank you. Madam PS, Mr. PS, and colleagues, good afternoon. I want to start make a comment by really appreciating what the Commissioner has presented and Clifford. And what only I'll observe is that out of the regulations that are in place, even as we implement, let's also see how best we can continue supporting the private sector to thrive so that it doesn't become an impediment, but it solves the problems that we are facing. Allow me to, you talked about storage, collecting the data, storing it, and of course making it of good use. That is the essence of data, and open data, for that matter, is important. But I want to focus on the micro and small enterprises who are the majority, and then link this up to, is it true that all of them have been reached? They know the benefits of this data. They know that when they are connecting or maybe downloading whichever platform or portal, entering into a portal, that their data is being harvested. And if it is being harvested, how secure is it? And I think that's exactly what we are talking about. But it is also important to note that in the private sector, we work very closely, and I've seen apps coming up, bringing together, if I can give an example of the healthcare sector, whereby we have, maybe you visited a clinic, then you are referred to a level 3 hospital, then level 4, then level 5. How can that data be synchronized such that we are able to get benefit from the data that is available? And what is the purpose of that? How accessible is that data? That's exactly what we are trying to address at the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And I take this approach of the business and the commercialization of the innovations, because there is also need for us to be connected. And we link academia, we link to the corporate, the big corporates like Safaricom, who are also our members. And then, of course, we also link them up with the micro and small enterprises in the villages, in the grassroots, because that is why exactly where the full benefit of data mining and data packaging, analysis of data, and making it information for use. And by so doing, I know that we have the AfCFTA, the African Free Continental Trade Area, for instance, and Kenya is a gateway. We were having a discussion, and we saw that with the panelists earlier, that yes, we may have these bright ideas and very good strategy, but how long will it take to be implemented? If we do not implement, our brothers and sisters will be better off implementing even the drafts and moving ahead. So that is something that we are really focusing on and saying, yes, when we are talking about data, availability of the data, the quality of the data, the usefulness of that, and then we build confidence and trust that even as we are being asked to provide data, it is for our own good. I want to give an example of how data in the energy sector is being utilized. I know we have KPLC, and I'm seeing companies harvesting the information that is available with KPLC, for example, but now looking at the entire value chain in that energy sector and seeing where are we losing energy? Is it the fridge? Is it the lighting? Is it the sockets? Where are these leakages? But then now that data, there are companies that are coming up and collecting that data and building a history of consumption of that. And that helps even the entire sector, be it manufacturing sector, be it the hospitality sector, so you know exactly where do we reduce this. And then there is technology that's coming up about maybe solar and these other renewable energies. So all that comes to really assist our country to reduce the cost of operation and be able to be competitive to access the export markets that we are all targeting. And finally, I know that COVID came. And I want to give that example because I know most of our corporates and MSMEs really benefited from that because we were restricted from movement. And that's where data comes in, very, very, very important. We were restricted from moving from one region to the other. But technology came in, data was shared across, and there was e-commerce really that was put at its best, not only in Kenya but across the world. And that is the essence when each and every individual realized why data is important, because you could not supply without getting that data. And I really want to thank Safaricom for giving free data for students who are learning and other micro and small enterprises. So that is exactly what we're looking at practically. How do we now demystify that this data is for the corporates, is for the big organizations, is for the elite, and not for everyone else? And that is the purpose of, that's what we are saying, that yes, let's also refocus on making this data readily available. In the morning, we're talking about infrastructure in the rural areas, in the grassroots, so that we reap from the economies of scale, and each one of us benefit from the same. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Samuel. What I pick from Samuel is that because he promotes businesses in Kenya and abroad, Kenyan businesses, the last example he gave about e-commerce, it's very relevant. With COVID, most restaurants actually had to go into home delivery. And I'm sure most of us may have ordered some food to be delivered at home. And it's a sector that actually boomed and gave jobs to bodabodas and other players in that market. But now from a data protection point of view, as you order your food and it's delivered at your convenience to your house, what you have actually done is tell the bodaboda where you live. Well, not the bodaboda, but the owner of the delivery service has one extra data point about you. They know where you live. So as you enjoy the convenience of your food, you should also be concerned about how aware are these businesses in terms of ensuring that the data points they're collecting about us is actually safe and secure and it's not abused. And I think this is the right time to introduce my last panelist, Joseph Madenge. He's the COO of Serianu. He'll tell us what Serianu does and then give us his insights on the Data Commissioner's speech and what he feels about the current environment in the data protection and security side. Over to you, Joseph.
Thank you, Walubengo. It is certainly a pleasure to be here this afternoon. To my panelists as well in the conversations that we have started. For those of you who know what shift work is and understand the concept of night shift, graveyard, that's where you are right now.
Oh, they need to stretch.
After lunch, and you're struggling to stay awake and look for who is attacking the environment. So this is what I do. Let's stay together for just a bit. Serianu is a cybersecurity services company. We offer managed security services. There's a lot of quality stuff that Madame spoke today, and I'll just use some of those quotes to throw them out. One of the things that I liked that you said was, life is understood backwards, but lived forwards. I'll put it in context. Sirianu, we do research. That's one of our key things. We have done a report every year that focuses on different concepts around cybersecurity. Last year, we talked about data protection. I'll give you 3 statistics. Tuesday afternoon, here I am talking maths. 45% of the people who took our survey did not understand what the Data Protection Act means to them. 70% collect some form of PII, personal identifiable information. Well, these are huge numbers. It's the law of the land. You know it's going to impact you, but you have no clue how it will impact you. I want to spend some time talking about what we have just described. Look, in this day and age of information, we are leaking data whether we like it or not. How many of you watch YouTube? How many of you get your news online? Have you noticed how one YouTube video leads to the next one of the same context? How many of you on IG? I like telling my kids I'm on Facebook and they tell me, don't say that again, Daddy.
Instagram
It leads one to another. So whether you like it or not, you're leaking data. So here is the opportunity. Yes, data right now is a gold mine. Safaricom and a few others have told us here in the morning they're able to tell, they could be able to tell, I don't know if they're doing this, where you're stuck in traffic, in what direction you're going to, simply by consuming the data consumption that you're doing. Let's turn it to our advantage, right? This thing is a gold mine. We have to find ways to derive the information out of it. And here comes the data protection law, because now whoever is collecting this data needs to be compliant to certain pieces of things about it. One, and again, Data Commissioner will be able to correct me on this one, you are able to access what somebody is collecting about you. So, if Glovo is collecting information about where you live and what you order, ideally, you should be able to access that information.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. If, for example, you went out with your family to a dinner restaurant, or you went out with your friends to a bar, and that bar the next week starts sending you messages about upcoming happy hour. How many people have gotten those things? How annoying are they? You should be able to tell that person, please delete that. I don't need it. It has nothing to do with me, right? So there's opportunity here, people. Big glaring opportunity. Remember, on one hand, we are not going backwards. We are not going back to paper and pen. If you can sit in your house on a Saturday afternoon and order your groceries, on a Tuesday night and order dinner, during a party and order for drinks, this is our reality now, people. Let's find a way to maximize on that opportunity. As mentioned, we as Sirianu, we look for ways to maximize your information assets in a way that you're able to make key decisions around it. So part and parcel of being compliant to this law, and I know this is my last minute, is to, one, understand what data you as an organization, you as a government agency, you as an NGO are collecting about your various clients, staff members, and so on and so forth. What is subject to the law, and what decisions is hidden in there, what information is hidden in there that can fuel you to the next level.
Thank you, Joseph. I think that's why you are last. You really brought the act to life. What he mentioned about the people delivering food to your doorstep, they, of course, now know where you live, but one of the things the act does for you is to empower you. You now have a right to know what they know about you. Okay, so it's no longer that they are collecting data about you without telling you, but now it's one of your data rights to demand from them that they provide you access in order to understand what other things have they collected about you. So the Act gives the citizens certain powers that were previously not there. Just checking the time, we only have 15 minutes, and now I'm ready to open it to the floor. If you have some questions, for the panelists and even the data commissioner. This is the time to bring them forth. Let's have the first round of 4. She put up her hand first. Number 2, and then number 3. Any fourth one? Okay, let's deal with those 3. Just give us your name, maybe organization, and the question you're addressing to either the panelists or the data commissioner.
All right.
Sorry, if you could stand up, if you don't mind. I'm a mwalimu in my other life. Just stand up, it will project your voice better.
Hello? Okay. So good afternoon. I'm Margaret Kimani. I'm actually an ALDA. I'm in investment banking. My question is very straight to the point. The Data Protection Act sounds very nice. Should I say sexy? Very nice. But the point, I think I realized I had to read it last year because there's a policy I was actually pushing in the banking sector.
Yeah.
And I realized even that internally, even the people that are obligated with the data, the analytics, are not aware. And now on the opposite side, what is happening is that when we want to push certain agendas, and specifically, for me, I was looking at the supplier diversity, and then what happens on the opposite? So when you go to lobby for a certain policy to be changed, people are telling you that the Data Protection Act does not allow us. So I think we are using both sides of the coin, which is not right. Secondly, on the very first point, I feel that the awareness is lacking. Us guys here in the room, I don't know how many people have read it specifically. If you ask people to raise their hands, you know, and I think my colleague earlier on asked a question he's from Copycat. He asked the question of, yes, it sounds very nice in this room, but I think we need to do some more awareness.
Okay.
What my youth say that qua ground, things are
Literally
very different. Very different. And even at senior management, yeah? So that's my question. What are we doing about it?
Okay, there's a question on awareness. I think maybe data commissioner may respond. We had another question there. Number 2.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mukunya Muko. I'm with Oracle Technologies. My question is to Madam Kasait. We normally give our ID numbers, mobile numbers in any establishment that we go to. What would be the guidance in terms of that data and how that data should be handled and dealt with?
Okay, we give out our IDs all over the place. What is the guidance on that? There was a third question on the back left.
Good afternoon. My name is Francis Timothy from the
Francis?
Yes, Timothy.
Okay.
From the NGOs Coordination Board. As I listened to the Data Protection Commissioner, and I appreciate her role, one thing came into my mind. In this room, when we live here and we are going to explore Diani, you will use a boda or a tuk-tuk, you'll go somewhere, buy something. You will pay by M-Pesa.
Yeah.
So by the end of this session, you'll have shared your full names and your number with more than 20 strangers. What they do with that detail is something different. And I don't know where they fall in this category of the data processors or data categories. As you're seated here, I've received about 4 messages by a certain, I don't know who it is, inviting me to go for their nominations tomorrow. Where they got my number, I don't know. But you can be sure this is something. It is something that is the purview of the commission or even the service providers to go a notch higher. When I want to send money or pay by that, I can mask my number so that wherever I'm sending, if someone I don't know, I don't have to reveal my entire details. I can mask something. I throw that challenge to the floor.
Okay, thank you, Francis. We have 3 questions. Some were comments, but they all seem to be heading to the Data Protection Commissioner. So, Madam Kasait, the first question was from, is it Kimani? Investment Banking. And she says she's trying to probably make some progress from where she sits, and she's finding people are not aware, or they are actually aware that there is a Data Protection Act, but they're saying we can't do X, Y, Z because of the act. Then the question from Oracle, I didn't get his name, but he was saying, we are leaving our IDs all over the place. What is the position with that? Should we perhaps refuse to leave IDs, for example, at buildings? And the last bit from Francis, which maybe could also go to Safaricom. When we pay with our mobile money, the merchant, of course, is able to read our numbers and our names. And what they do with those details, nobody perhaps knows. So, Madam Kasait, if you can, where's the roaming? Okay, yeah, if you can respond to those issues. You could come up here and join us.
Thank you for the questions. This is a question we often hear, and I'm very happy that today I'm joined. I know that GIZ is in the room. Part of the conversations we've been having with them, and they can hear them, is about three: simplification of the regulations, awareness creation, research on sector-specific guidelines, and priorities on fintechs, telecos, health. Those are the priorities. And a part of the discussion, even with the American Chamber of Commerce, is how then do we simplify that? So I'm happy that they are present in the room, and that's part of the support that I'm sure they will be prioritizing. Coming to the concern about awareness, I think the matters of data protection, as you can hear from the room, have become so important. It's not possible to leave it to one institution. I'm not saying we are running away from our own responsibility, but to some extent, it's a shared responsibility. What has the Office of the Data Commissioner done? We've had an open door policy. We've tried as much as possible to attend webinars hosted by professional institutions. We've tried as much as possible to attend forums of this nature, and that's why I'm happy I'm here. We almost in every month we are in a forum just trying to explain data protection. It's nowhere near adequate. That's why we are happy to partner or share information as much as possible. Three, realizing the limitations in terms of our own capacity to be everywhere. We partnered with Kenya School of Government so that we are able to train TOTs and be able to get people to attend Kenya School of Government who we launched a curriculum on data protection. Why? We realized that data protection is so significant and therefore the need to expose government officials because they hold a lot of data. This is ongoing. Currently they have, in fact, I think I saw one of, I don't know if she's in the room, Vera from Kenya School of Government. They're receiving many requests. I would encourage a top management board, reasonably priced. They're not the only one. I know Strathmore is also offering, Kenya School of Law is also offering, another few institutions. We are partnering with Kenya School of Government. Please spare time. It's an opportunity for you to undertake that 5 days training so that at least at the board level, they're able to appreciate what data protection is about. And also we are also in conversation with GIZ on simplifying high level at CEO's basis a one-day training course. So those are some of the efforts that were asked. The issue around access to building, again, this is a question I hear all the time. At our end, when we realize this is a concern, we are developing a guidance note on what to do when it comes to issues of access to building. They have a lawful basis, if I may clarify, that there's a lawful basis for collecting information when you enter buildings. The issue is about identifying yourself. And the next question is what policy framework they are putting to make sure that there's good data protection in as far as that is concerned. Like I said, it's a guidance note that is work in progress in as far as my office is concerned. I think the case that, the question by Francis on masking, I think I'll leave perhaps Andrew to respond to that. Thank you.
Yeah, Safaricom, deal with the M-Pesa question, please.
Thank you. And I think I want to paint a global context as we are coming to address that question. I did mention something around Web 3.0. So in simple terms, is a hyper-intelligent, hyper-personalized internet. And we are increasingly going into what we call a metaverse. A metaverse, in simple terms, is the intermixing of both physical and digital worlds to an extent that you can't tell the difference between the two. Now, if you're living in an increasingly digital world, then your digital identity becomes almost like your lifeline, like part of your heart that is pumping. And at Safaricom, we're also cognizant of this. And we're actually implementing a couple of measures to actually address this. Number one is the masking of the information as you're sending M-Pesa. So this is something we're looking at from an innovation lens. It's feedback noted, and it's something that we are actively looking at exploring already. You can check through the service to check about your details. Already it's in place for those for whom it's active, and it's already coming into shape. Number two, we're also giving customers options on their hands so that you're able to control the promotional messages. At times, I spoke about customer education. Some customers could be enrolled to some promotional messages, and we're also giving them the option that they actually have control and they can cancel these messages. So we are cognizant of the global trends. Of course, M-Pesa started as a simple P2P, but now it's part of our daily lives. And really we are looking into it. Then there's a second question around which I'd like to address now from a national innovation context around leaving our details at gates everywhere we go. And I think the call to action and the question to pose, I think that's an innovation opportunity. That's a $1 billion company in waiting for the person who can solve that problem, because innovation is about identifying a problem, looking at possible solutions, and actually implementing something that will solve that problem, not only for yourself, but for the rest of the country and the world. So my parting shot as well is on that concept, then that's an innovation opportunity. Let's innovate around that. Yep.
Okay, thank you, Andrew, and Data Commissioner, for the response. I can see I have 3 minutes, but somebody has burning. If you allow us, maybe 5. Wow. Number 1, to the lady, 3. Huyu ni mwenyeji bwana. Where are we? Those 1, 2, please. The lady, 3, 4. Okay, 5 mwenyeji. Sawa, shoot.
Yes, this question is addressing Madame Kasait, and it's about the third part.
Please, your name and organization.
Yes. So I go by the name of DJ, and
DJ.
I work for Power Internet. And the question is from Madame Kasait. It's about the third part of the DPA legislation that comes into play allegedly somewhere in July, you say, where it's about people having to pay for licenses and registration to get some money. You need to pay in order to become a data processor or the data controller. Isn't it smarter to get money from the people who abuse the Data Protection Act? So make the punishment for the people who are the wrongdoers. So if someone sends you unsolicited messages, punish them hard with cash where it hurts them the most. That's the way to make the money and to make the changes that are required.
Okay, registration fee, that will go to Madame Kasait. Number 2, please.
Yeah. Hello?
Yeah, can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Monica Omoro, I'm a communication kind of specialist in the Ministry of ICT. I'm a government official. I want to commend Madame Kasaiti first for the tremendous work they are doing. They are young. They have done public participation and all that to create awareness. But my question to you, Madam, is We know, we always say, as the Ministry of ICT, 75% of Kenya population is the youth. The youth are in the digital spaces. Yeah? So, what aggressive campaigns are you intending to put in place first? Because you know the data protection issues are very complex. Kenyans don't like a lot of complex information. So to hit the youth in the digital space with some kind of simplified, because we know for a fact, many people here maybe do not know, you breach that act, the penalty is dire in millions. But how many of you do you know? You don't know that. So they go ahead threatening people and all that. So my direct contribution would be maybe what kind of direct, aggressive media strategy are you planning to put in place, one, to simplify those issues to reach the youth and the targeted people? And as well as Data Protection Act, apart from the media campaigns, maybe you could also, the media itself, there are many strategies involving the media. We can have stakeholders and all that. We can train people in the Kenya School of Government and all that. But if you involve the media, particularly editorial-wise, not advertising-wise, because you know advertising is expensive, the message will go out. So just a contribution, not really a criticism. Thank you, Madam.
Please, next, number 3, keep it short and quick. We've run out of time. Yeah, just go for it.
My name is Clive Asande from Strathmore University. My question is with regards to exposure internationally, because we live in a global village. Does the data protection also covers internationally? And I know it's an unfair question, but what's your view in that?
Does the Data Protection Act cover internationally
or only?
Does it mean in terms of foreigners in our country or Kenyans abroad?
No. Internationally, Kenyans exposed to Facebook, and there's a lot of content that we share there.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, number 4.
Thank you. My question goes to the Commissioner. My name is Chris Arunga. I'm a risk management practitioner. And I'm just going to be direct. If I owe you money and I have not paid you, and the Data Protection Act expects that you basically get my consent to process that data, what it means is that then what does it do to other lenders who do not know that I've not paid you, but I cannot, you can also not share that information with them because I have to give you consent, and basically I can't give you consent. Say it differently, if, for example, somebody is sick, he has a disease that can impact on another person's life, and you see that person with another girl, and you go and whisper to them that, you know what, so-and-so is having a contagious disease. Have you breached? I need your personal opinion because this is very important for practice, particularly actually the British Data Protection Act, because we are aware that our Data Protection Act is a derivative of the General Data Protection regulations. The British Data Protection Act has actually included legitimate interest. That if you have a legitimate interest, then you as a data processor can process that data without the necessity of getting consent from the user. So I just need a personal opinion. I know most probably it might not be in our act, but then what does it mean? Do we need to do something on that? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Talking about sharing of personal data, does our act provide for that? Finally, number 5, go for it.
Thank you. My name is Michael Odhiambo from the ICT Authority. I was really itching to ask this question, and this question really is to most of the multinationals we have sitting here, because we are talking about data protection, and so I felt I need to ask this on behalf of probably most of my colleagues in government and probably even in private sector.
Yeah.
Now we engage with people like Oracle, Microsoft, AWS, so forth. And we know that data protection or rather, a lot of these laws are, it's anchored in law.
Yeah.
And as we're talking about data protection, that's resident in Kenya. Now, my question is, we as consumers in Kenya, hosting data in Kenya, I could have a MNC product, but I have the data hosted in Kenya. But even as we go to sign on contracts between ourselves and the multinational, why can't we have a conversation about the law that we're supposed to use for that contract then to take precedence? Because half the time it's always based on the US law, based on the UK law. The data sits here, we are the users. So I think we need to have a conversation around that, because sometimes the ideas are good, the solutions are good, make sense, but then we get stuck at the legal part of this. So I just think that that's one of those things that we need to get clarity on. The second one is really, and I don't know whether this is more for the regulator or for the data protection office, but I'll ask nevertheless. In a lot of the industries, I'll look at probably the tobacco industry. An advert will run, and then at the end of the advert, you'll hear, smoking can be hazardous to your health.
Yeah.
There'll be an advert on beer or wherever it is, but drinking is
Some
not
caution.
for under 18 and all that.
Yeah.
In this industry of ours, where do we have this, for user protection, so that then, even as I am providing a service, we are obligated to make or create awareness for all our users. For example, as you use this SIM card, if you're below 18, it may run you broke. I mean, that's just an example. But I think there's a need for some user awareness in this industry, so that then our end user is protected. Now, as to whether that is for the DPC or the regulator CA, I do not know, but it's a conversation that I hope we will have at the point of this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We've actually run out of time, so all questions went to the data commissioner. I have other panelists here. We should have made them work harder, but these questions are to you, Madam Kasait. The first one, registration payment. Why do we need to pay for registration when we can penalize the offenders instead? There was a question on youth awareness, I think related. Then there was a question on the territorial coverage of the Data Protection Act. Then Chris was talking about sharing personal data. Is there a provision for those who have loaned you the money or lend you the money and you default? Can they share with CRB, for example, or does the Act, stop them? Finally, Mike, on cloud contracts, given the fact that the Act is very territorial, preferably wanting us to store the data locally, at what point, how do you reconcile those two and the need for caution? Over to you, Madam Kasait.
Thank you, moderator. DJ, just to clarify, the fee charged is not meant to raise any money. It is a convenience fee, I would say. And we went through this during, I'm not sure if you participated in the public participation during the regulation development. We moved from what we quoted initially to almost half after public participation. We moved from registering annually to registering what is it called? After you register initially, you then come to renewal after 24 months. This was industry proposal. It was adopted wholly. In other jurisdictions, penalties, when you use penalties as a basis for raising funds, in fact, you have an opposite effect. Everybody goes under the ladder and nobody complies. It's tested in some European countries, it doesn't work. That's not to say we don't have penalties. There are penalties on breach. It's 1% of your revenue for the last audited accounts of 5 million. So that tag already exists, but it shouldn't be a basis of raising or fundraising. Because really, the whole idea around data, the whole concept around data protection has been discussed by my CS on numerous occasions, my PSs, is the issue around data becoming a cross-cutting issue and being able to be driving economy. So that's the whole essence of data protection. So the more people comply, the more we have ethical businesses, the more we are using data for the right purposes. So that fundraising for purposes of running the office is not one of the underlying pillars. Two, I'll quickly go to the question by Amos, DJ, on around the digital space and media. That's welcome feedback. Of course, any feedback in terms of enhancing this campaign is welcome. Said, on the question around whether we have extraterritorial jurisdiction, that's why under the Act we have the power to collaborate with other enforcement agencies. That we have, as long as you're processing data for Kenyans or Kenyan residents, then we have that power to actually collaborate with other institutions. Chris, legitimate interest remains one of the 9 reasons for processing data. This is a personal question, so I want to assume, moderator, I'm protected from answering personal questions.
You can generalize.
But a more serious note, there are 9 bases. Just to mention a few, legitimate interest is one that always businesses run to. Contractual obligation, lawful basis, consent. Those are just a few of the ways of processing data. So you just need perhaps to look at what makes sense for your business in terms of processing data. But remember, always the underlying issue is the right of the data subject should be the things that informs you how you run, how you process your personal data. And the last question, the last question is Michael. I think it was more of a comment, so I really need not comment. But I like the proposal. I see fintechs and banks run that. We are governed by CBK. Perhaps it's an issue, and from what I understand, great ideas come from Connect. Yeah. And even Andrew has suggested there's a solution in terms of this. Why not perhaps come up with proposals on how then we make our marketing in messages more customer-centric, so that we are running that kind of an advert as one of the resolutions from Connect. Who knows, next year when we come here, we'll have enhanced awareness and also made sure that customers are aware of the effect of data protection. Thank you.
Thank you for those comprehensive answers. There's one on cloud. Do we have Amazon? Oracle, yeah. Oracle also does cloud business. There was one on cloud. Do you expect, how do you deal with that? Cloud contracts vis-a-vis the Data Protection Act. Very quickly, because I've run out of time badly.
Okay, so number one, of course, we're always engaging with government when it comes to such conversations. We do have provisions that can enable, you still have your service running, and we have the contractual element as well, looked at with guidance from our corporate headquarters. So we always, have a forum where we can engage on making the contract support the service that you need, but also where the applicable law should take precedence. But it's always conversations that we have. Thirdly, is that we also work with our partners. So there are discussions that can also be easily executed through our partners, even when you're doing contracts for cloud. And then we already have our agreements with those partners on how they provide that cloud service within this country. But the suggestion around continuing to have this engagement, because it does impact how some of the agencies do their contracts. At the government level, also there are agreements on what should be the area of jurisdiction for the contract. But these are conversations we're always having with guidance from our corporate head office as well.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Now
sorry. Yeah. We also have my colleague from our office who wants to comment.
She wants to chip in.
Yeah.
Okay,
yes.
I'll allow.
Good evening. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to respond to that specific question. My name is Hanifa Shakombo. I'm a senior legal manager for Oracle, so I can speak to the contracts. So in terms of the cloud services that we provide, we act as a data processor for our customers who are the data controllers. We operate as a multinational. We operate in many jurisdictions with varying data protection laws, which of course we recognize. And so in our contracts, we actually acknowledge that our processing of that data is subject to local laws, right?
Okay.
And we provide that we will comply, and we expect our customers to also comply as the data controller with our respective obligations that are imposed in applicable laws, which would include local laws. So that would not be an issue for Oracle in terms of complying with the Kenya Data Protection Act, insofar as we are processing data for Kenyan citizens.
Okay, thanks a lot for that clarification. I think I want to hand over to the MC. My job is over and done with. Thank you.
Fantastic. One more round of applause for the moderator, John Walubengo. Clearly a topic that is generating a lot of reaction. I can remember just after the 2017 general election here in Kenya, in 2018, Cambridge Analytica was a hot topic for obvious reasons. And so that's why this conversation cannot stop past this room. When you think about clicks being converted to votes, it's a serious issue. And who would have thought rather that Mushene would be a breach of data rights? Now I have to be careful what I say, to different individuals. But thank you so much, John, for a wonderful discussion throughout this session. Now, we want to thank the panelists and speakers from these sessions. I want to request, Madam Kasait, if you can head over to stage left as we get the gift bags ready. There they are. And we will recognize each of the panelists. Fantastic. So I want to begin with Joseph Madenge from Seriano. Thank you so much. And reminding us how much we can waste time on YouTube. Before you know it, you'll spend 3 hours on that rabbit hole of videos. Thank you so much for your contributions today. Wonderful photogs capturing the moment. Thank you. May take your seat. Next, Samuel Matonda, CEO of the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, now evening. We appreciate all of your contributions today. Wonderful. I'd like to call on Andrew Masila from Safaricom to make his way up. Thank you. We can give him a round of applause. Wasn't easy being up here and giving such fantastic insights. Thank you. Next, Chris Makua from Oracle. A round of applause for him. Thank you. And our speaker who helped to set the tone, Clifford Okembo, CEO of the Environmental Systems Research Institute. Thank you so much. You can make your way up to receive your gift. And really appreciate the conversations. And of course, we can keep it going. We have several activities still lined up for the evening that will encourage you to take a part in. We cannot forget our moderator of the day, Mr. John Walubengo. Thank you for steering the conversation today. Elicited a lot of questions for Madam Kasait, who will be our final recipient for her gift. So we'll do the same thing we did in the last session. John, if you can stay right there, we'll do a switcheroo, and we'll have you give the gift to Madam Kasait. Thank you. Fantastic. Thank you so much to the Data Commissioner and for taking on the questions and queries on data. Wonderful. I'll have the panelists take their seats. Thank you so much. You have been so gracious to give us your time and your thoughts. All right, so just before we break, it is now 5:40, and we are just about to segue into the cocktail, which I understand is underway. So this will be at Bustani. So the same area where we had lunch this afternoon is where the cocktail will be, and that is being sponsored by Safaricom. That will run until 7:30 and will flow right into dinner, still at Bustani, and that will be courtesy of Telcom Kenya. And then after that, at 9 p.m., if you have any more energy, there will be a fireside chat, and that will be courtesy of Dimensions Data and Dell, and the day wraps up from there. But we will be hopeful to see you tomorrow morning here. The track for Wednesday, I beg your pardon, will be digital services and skills, lots of discussions, and key ICT minds sharing their thoughts. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure being your host for today. Have a lovely evening. Bye for now.